The early 2000s were such a weird era for anime. That was around the time a lot of the popular stuff we know and love began to air. It was a great era for discovering new anime that would become staples for a lot of us. However, that was also around the time when we'd see lots of mangas trying to get a slice of that anime pie. You see, since a lot of them had begun serialization around that time, they didn't have a lot of content to adapt, so anime adaptations would take a lot of liberties with them. We'd either get filler, or a lackluster adaptation with a few arcs, or we'd get an anime original ending. There's tons of early anime that did this kind of stuff to varying degrees of success. I mean, just look at Fullmetal Alchemist, with a portion of the fandom still believing the first adaptation is superior. However, in my time watching anime, there was one that seemed to do all this, and as you would expect, came out as a really messy anime with a lack of focus and commitment. That would be the melodramatic high school battle shonen, Tenjou Tenge. Tenjou Tenge follows the life of this guy, our main character, Soichiro Nagi, who's over here looking like the long-lost relative to Heihachi. So he, along with his friend Bob Makihara, are a duo of delinquents who call themselves the Knuckle Bomb. They go around picking fights with the strongest people around in whatever school they find themselves in order to assert their dominance and prove themselves as the top dogs around. This in turn has led them to many expulsions. Yeah, I should mention, these are actual teenagers. Their many expulsions have led them to Todo Academy, a high school not like the others. This is a high school made specifically for the training of martial artists. Their goal is to preserve the martial arts for generations to come. So our boys are ecstatic about their new transfer because they've heard this is where they can find the strongest guys to beat up, and they want nothing more than to prove their strength and enjoy fighting. On the other side of things, we meet two students of the academy, Masataka Takayanagi, a second year, and his senior, yes, she's actually 17, Maya Natsume. The two are on their way to meet Maya's little sister, Aya, and also the final character of the group who will eventually become the Juken Club, though it takes a while before we get there. Soichiro and Bob immediately go around picking fights with their seniors. Things seem to be going their way until Maya and Masataka step up to stop them. They don't take them all that seriously though until Maya reveals her true form. Yeah, as part of her special training, she uses some kind of technique to restrain her power, which in turn gives her a childlike appearance, which is something everyone around is just cool with, I guess. And yes, there is a lot of fan service in this anime, and so she one-shots Soichiro, which sends him flying, and thanks to anime bullshit, lands him directly in the shower room Aya is in. And somehow she gets completely rizzed by him, proposing to him right there. But Soichiro chooses to protect his virginity and runs away. The following day has Aya chasing Soichiro around, trying to shower him with love, and this bit goes a bit longer than you'd hope. And this carries on to the next day, where Bob is trying to have a talk with Masataka. He's trying to find out just who the tough ones are, but Soichiro interrupts and picks a fight with Masataka. And while it looks like this is going to be a pretty even fight, things go south way fast. Masataka completely owns him. Like, this isn't even a fight, just a beatdown. Also, I'm going to say this now, this is the best animated fight in the entire series, and this is just episode 2. This fight sets up how outclassed our main characters are. Up until now, all we've seen is Soichiro boast about how he's never lost a fight in his entire life, and we immediately see him get his ass handed to him. It's great because now we have a way to measure their progress as characters, because as you know in Shonen, strength equals character development. This loss has him feeling bummed out, so Aya comes to comfort him, making him promise never to lose again. A promise he'll be breaking very soon. Fast forward a few days later and we get introduced to our first antagonists of the arc. These two have been called by the strongest students, the Executive Council, to deal punishment to Soichiro and Bob. The first dude, whose name doesn't really matter, has the power to create fire using his chi. Oh yeah, chi is this anime's power system. And he goes to launch an attack on the main duo, setting Bob's precious bike on fire and attacking his girlfriend. And as if to show off, he gives Maya a call just to flex, which pisses off Aya, leading her to get some vision about the whole scuffle about to throw down. This is her special ability, the Dragon's Eye, an ability that lets her see into the past and future, hear the thoughts and communicate with both humans and objects, and see through everything. And this is why she also suddenly fell in love with Soichiro, because I guess she saw his future as someone with immeasurable strength and wants to be the first to get a slice of that pie, though she hasn't really mastered this ability. But it's able to let her find where Soichiro is and goes to back him up. Meanwhile, the two stand no chance against this one guy and get utterly defeated. Even with Aya showing up, she's no match for him and loses. So after yesterday's defeats, Aya is in need of a new katana and stumbles upon one very peculiar katana, the Chokuto Reiki, a katana that belonged to their older brother who doesn't seem to be around anymore. Maya isn't too pleased about this and forbids Aya from ever using it, probably because the obviously cursed looking katana is in fact cursed. But we'll circle back to that later. On the other side of things, Soichiro and Bob have come to the realization that they are in fact super weak and stand no chance in that school. So if they want to become stronger, they need to train and thus bow their heads and join the Juken Club, declaring that in 3 months he'll become stronger than all of them. There's also something interesting that happens in this scene. Every now and then a character narrates to us, the audience. This isn't some kind of internal monologue, but a straight up narration in a way that feels like the characters are recalling the past. And in this scene, the one narrating, Masataka, explicitly says that on this day, the strongest Juken Club was formed. This may not seem like much, but it's an interesting tidbit of information right now. So with Maya, the club captain, allowing them to join the club, the executive council is not too pleased about this and sends the same dudes out to handle it. But his opponent this time is Maya, and she goes on to style on him, taking him down with nothing but a single branch, establishing just how strong she really is. A couple of weeks pass and the club have been having training camp at the Natsume residence. Meanwhile, the executive council is formulating another scheme. They aren't too pleased with Maya's actions as well as taking in the two boys into the Juken Club, so they opt to go for more extreme methods. Up until now, we've only known about the executive council through the other characters, but now we finally get to see who they are. The vice president, Emi Isuzu, their advisor, Bunshichi Tawara, and their president, Mitsuomi Takayanagi, Masataka's older brother. And not only do they seem to have beef with the Juken Club, but with Maya's older brother, who we still don't know anything about, but just his name, Shin. Back at the training camp, things seem to be getting steamy. Maya was up all night giving Soichiro special training. This causes Aya to have a misunderstanding and become incredibly curious about what happened last night. It brings her a lot of unease. It also doesn't help that Soichiro just hypes up Maya to Aya, which makes her even more uneasy, afraid her sister will steal Soichiro from her. Aya, as well as all the other characters, save for Maya and our antagonist Mitsuomi, are all pretty much one-note characters with not a lot of dimensions to them. Aya is especially the worst offender of this. Her whole motivation is getting Soichiro to notice her and reciprocate her feelings, despite knowing how much of a futile effort it is. Every time she shows up on screen, you can bet her dialogue will have Soichiro's name in it. It gets really annoying hearing her constantly scream his name every time. Then there's Masataka. For someone of his caliber and strength, you'd think the anime would utilize him a lot more or take him seriously, but for most of it, the anime and the characters themselves treat him like a total joke. It also doesn't help that he's a huge pervert most of the time. Up until a certain point in the anime, I had a lot of respect for him, but then he throws that out the window in one episode. But I did really enjoy the duo of Soichiro and Bob. Soichiro is a pretty simple guy. He carries on that tough guy persona, but is incredibly childish and foul-mouthed. He doesn't try to be mature and honorable, opting to go for cheap tactics when in a fight, so long as it can get him the upper hand. It's hilarious just watching him be him. And Bob, on the other hand, is such a chill guy. He's incredibly mature, being the one to talk sense into Soichiro most of the time. He doesn't go around picking fights and only desires to get stronger to protect those close to him. And I just gotta say, for an anime from 2004, I like how they didn't make him a stereotypical anime black guy. His appearance and characters aren't exaggerated in that way. He feels like a normal dude. Oh boy, I can't wait to see how these two grow and develop as characters. Surely we're going to see more of them as the show goes on. Alright, so the club is having some downtime from all that training and decide to have some fun going bowling. But little do they know, they're falling right into the executive council's trap. You know how the student council in anime seems to have more political power and influence than government itself? Yeah, this is one of those. They are able to somehow clear the area of civilians, leaving only the Joken club inside. But before they can launch their attack, we cut to Aya, who's still hung up on that night. So she tries to use her dragon's eye to look into the past and see what actually happened. And she does! Scandalous! She's even more upset about this now, smacks Maya who was trying to comfort her, and bolts. But this is when things start going south for the club. The executive council storms in. Maya gets to face off against Isuzu, the vice president, and also a ninja with tons of hidden weapons on her. Aya on the other hand faces off a guy with big stick energy, while the boys have to deal with an entire crowd. But Takayanagi offers to take them all on his own and sends Soichiro to go back up Maya and Aya. So he heads for them but runs into the executive council's #1 wrestler, Saga Mask. With that, everyone has gotten their own opponents to fight. A Shonen classic. First up, Maya vs Isuzu. This fight is filled to the brim with fan service. Almost every scene is accompanied with a panty shot, which does its job of being distracting as it can be. I have to say though, the fight is pretty creative for what it's worth. Isuzu takes full advantage of the limited space of the bathroom to corner Maya on several occasions. This benefits Isuzu a lot more, seeing as if it was a more open space she would have lost to Maya almost immediately. But she still doesn't stand a chance against Maya and loses. This fight doesn't have a lot of narrative weight to it, but it does have an interesting reveal. The secret to Isuzu's seemingly bottomless arsenal of weapons is, get this, she uses her chi to transform her body and suppress her body fat. She's actually a lot more bigger than she looks, and she's able to hide so many weapons in said body fat. It's not that big of a deal to the overall story, but I just felt I'd mention it because it feels so damn impractical. Moving on to the next fight, Soichiro vs Saga Mask. The fight appears to be going in Soichiro's favor until Saga Mask stops holding back and starts taking him seriously. The fight goes back and forth with looking like Soichiro is about to take another L until Maya shows up, gives him a bit of scolding and instructions, so thanks to that he's able to finally take his first actual win, as well as bond with his opponents, making them battle bros. But before he can savor his victory, he and Maya need to go find Aya because they fear something bad is about to happen. Maya vs Stick Guy. I really cannot be bothered to remember his name. Maya doesn't seem to be doing all that well, being pushed back with this guy's excellent stick skills. She also can't really focus on the fight because she's been thinking about that kiss, so she's getting really pummeled. In fact, she might lose, but then her dragon eye activates unwillingly, letting her see into Soichiro's childhood and how he's been alone growing up. Turns out he's one of the last survivors of a powerful clan that were experts at using chi. Oh boy, can't wait to find out more about his past. So Aya sees this and gets a second wind, ready to beat down her opponent, awakening her dragon eyes, which puts her in a feral, powered up state. She completely wrecks Stick Guy, breaking every bone in his body and almost killing him. Just after this, Soichiro shows up. Aya isn't too happy with what she's done, stating this was the first time she actually enjoyed fighting so much. This is the influence of the Dragon's Eye. It wants nothing more than destruction, a real inner demon that awakens the worst in its users. Using his very simple-minded nature, he's able to comfort her about it and give her some pep talk that makes her feel better. This is also the first time they have some kind of normal conversation that isn't played for laughs. It's kind of sweet. Back on the ground floor though with Masataka and Bob, they're making quick work of all the random thugs until the big boss of the executive council, Mitsuomi, shows up. The two of them are no match against the overwhelming power and get utterly floored, just in time for the trio of Soichiro, Maya and Aya to show up, and this gets Soichiro pissed. To make him even more angry, Mitsuomi doesn't even acknowledge Soichiro and looks down on him as nothing more than a street thug. Soichiro tries to fight him and that doesn't go too well for him as you'd expect. Mitsuomi calls out Soichiro's techniques as nothing more than an imitation, which was stolen by Natsume's older brother, Shin. Once again, Shin is name dropped, adding to the mystery of just who he is. With him knocking out all the members of the Juken Club, he gets a one-on-one with Maya. Turns out he and Maya used to go out when they were younger. He wants Maya back at his side, but she doesn't want the same thing. She holds a grudge against him because he's the one that actually killed her brother. But that gets interrupted by Soichiro, who's back in some kind of rage mood. And now it's time for round 2. Despite the power-up, Mitsuomi is still able to put Soichiro down until he starts getting stronger, pushing Mitsuomi back. And just as things are about to get more intense, with both sides ready to kill the other, Bunshichi shows up and de-escalates the fight. Just in time too, because if that fight had gone on longer, Mitsuomi would have definitely croaked. We find out that his body, for some strange reason, is degrading, with his inevitable death being just around the corner. This fight had only helped to draw that line even closer. So the executive council withdraws, the Juken Club finally regain consciousness. However, they can't help but wonder why it is the council seems to be after them, and they press Maya on for the details. What's her relationship with Mitsuomi? Why did Mitsuomi kill her brother? And what exactly are they up against? Answers we'll so painstakingly find out much later. Before we continue, there's some things I have to talk about. From this point on, the anime takes an entirely different direction, getting into a flashback arc. Now it's all fine and good having a flashback arc as it helps to shed light on a lot of the plot and the characters that have been around for quite some time, but the way it's executed here severely drags down the quality of the anime. Tenjou Tenge ran for 24 episodes with 2 OVAs. And in those 24 episodes, about half of them cover this flashback arc. Now, I have no problem with flashback arcs, but in my opinion, I feel like flashback arcs only work well in long-running shows. From your Naruto's to your Bleach and One Pieces, and even in more shorter stuff, if you're going to have a flashback arc, it shouldn't take up about half of the entire episode count. The shift in focus and perspective is incredibly jarring. It also doesn't help that the pacing for these flashback arcs are so egregiously slow that I found myself watching it at double speed because some scenes felt like they went on forever. The main purpose of this is to show us why Mitsuomi has beef with Maya in particular and the events that led to the death of Shin at the hands of Mitsuomi. It doesn't feel like something we should dwell so much on, right? Yeah, but somehow it's able to drag this on for an incredibly long amount of time, with a lot of the arc dedicated to a ton of fluff. You may be wondering why this is the case. Well, when the anime began airing, the manga was still going on and didn't have enough to fill out the story, so they took some liberties with it, and liberties they did. Rather than give us some kind of filler arc related to our main characters in the present, they decided to pad out the flashback. This direction takes away from the whole experience. You can't really bond with these characters or be all that invested in them because it's in the past. You more or less know their story and how it turns out, so whatever they're going through or whatever trouble they get into, you know they'll make it out eventually. And if characters seem to be pretty prominent in the past but aren't present in the future, you can already see their death a mile away. But that's enough about that. Time to see what this is all about. We're taken back to 2 years ago. One cold snowy night, we see Maya, who's just finished taking out a bunch of guys and has her eyes set on their leader, none other than a younger Mitsuomi. Yes, this is the same guy. Puberty hit him like a truck. Without a single word, he goes Sigma and quickly dispatches her. He goes on about how he's actually not the strongest being Shin, who, like clockwork, shows up. He teases Maya about her loss and sends her home. Shin, along with Mitsuomi and Bunshichi, run a group called Katana. Mitsuomi makes one fatal error though. He mentions how he might have fallen for her at that moment, much to Shin's dismay. Come the day of their school opening ceremony, he meets up with Maya and they talk about stuff. But she's being a tsundere about the whole thing and she swears to get revenge on him for taking her down. We cut to a dark alley. A member of Katana is seen running for his life from a mysterious assailant, but he can't get away and gets jumped. Man, I wonder who this mysterious assailant is. It's Maya. It's obviously Maya. But the members don't know who this is and hold a meeting about it the next day, and they get on guard, determined to find this assailant. Meanwhile, Maya gets into a fight with some random dude claiming to be the one hunting down Katana members, but she's not doing so well against him, all the while Shin and Mitsuomi are watching. They both want to step in, but they know that'll be an insult to her, so they reluctantly stand by and watch. It's especially agonizing for Shin. This is important. After all this, Mitsuomi bumps into this lady, Mana Kuzunoha, who's actually Shin's girlfriend, and she wants to meet him after school. And it goes how you would expect. And you know, for as much as Mitsuomi sees Shin as a friend, he doesn't try to stop her and in fact, goes ahead with what she's trying to do. I guess broship in the mud, am I right? Keep in mind he's also in love with Maya. So we've got a love triangle in our hands, or I guess it's a square if you throw Shin into the equation. Speaking of Shin, he's not too happy about how cozy his sister and Mitsuomi are getting, and he seems to be onto what Mitsuomi is also doing with his girlfriend, and he's getting really mad. So that same night, he sets out with the super cursed katana, the Chokuto Reiki, and goes around to blow off some steam. And how does he do that? Through acts of violence, of course. Meanwhile, Mitsuomi is still doing the devil's tango with Mana, after which she gives him a gift. But there's something deeper to this gift. She says this gift contains exactly why she fell for Mitsuomi. How cryptic. Just after he leaves, we see that she's actually in cahoots. Honestly, why do I say cahoots? Gosh, I feel like my lingo is so out of date sometimes. She seems to be working together with Isuzu, and they seem to have some kind of mission that involves Mitsuomi. So in that gift box, there are 2 items, a set of earrings and a memory stick. With Bunshichi's help, he's able to view the contents of this stick. It's all random recordings of her and her time with Shin. It all feels weird, but then they realize, who exactly has been recording them and why do they not remember being recorded? That's not all, as they get to see Shin in all his true ruthlessness. And so we get the reveal that Mana has actually been given a job to monitor Shin and the mysterious power he has, because that is her clan's duty, which works directly under the Takayanagi clan, run by Mitsuomi's father. So what's the deal with Shin? Well, at a young age of 10, he picked up the Chokuto Reiki and murdered his parents. Turns out he's got the Dragon's Eye too, and by wielding the Reiki, it helps him channel his powers and even awakens the inner demon inside him, who seems really overprotective of Maya and no one else, not even Aya. Wait a minute. Long wavy silver hair, revered by all as the strongest around with a lot of people looking up to him, borderline obsessed with a family member, and wields a 7-foot long katana? That's just Sephiroth. Now I can't unsee this. So Discount Sephiroth here wants nothing more than to have Maya by his side forever, but he knows that can't happen because, thanks to his Dragon's Eye, he has already seen the death at the hands of Mitsuomi, but he doesn't intend to go down without a fight. So we finally find out why Maya is going after the members of Shin's group. She wants to tear down everything her brother has made so that she can single him out and take him down so that he can see how strong she is and doesn't need to be protected anymore. And I guess if he sees that, he's going to stop raging around and trying to get stronger. If I sound unsure about this, that's because I am. Her reasoning doesn't quite make sense. In fact, both her and Shin don't really make sense in their motivations. And even more absurd about this is that Shin goes on to beat up his own top ranking members, so I guess Maya won't have to fight them? Seeing this, Bunshichi makes up his mind to take down Shin. After all this, Shin has gone to meet with the head of the Takayanagi family and Mitsuomi's father. He runs some big corporation using Shin as a test subject to further his goals of creating the ultimate martial artist who can take on any kind of evil. They are also the ones pulling the strings. With a lot of manipulation, everything Shin has experienced has been thanks to their setup. And it's that setup that leads Bunshichi straight to Shin. And so they fight. But unfortunately, he doesn't stand a chance against Shin, who goes full berserk on him, pretty much destroying Bunshichi's legs. But just as the fight looks like it's about to reach its conclusion, Bunshichi makes an amazing comeback and goes to town on his face. Without the katana, Shin doesn't stand a chance and loses the fight, but he doesn't die though. While this is all going on, we cut to Mitsuomi, who's been dealing with his own things. After seeing those videos of Shin going berserk, he's been stricken by fear, trying to hide himself from ever having to face Shin. He's in a really shaken up state of mind and can't focus on anything except his fear for Shin. Maya catches wind of this, smacks him around, and gives him a bit of pep talk. This puts him back on his feet, motivated to get even stronger. Man, it's almost as if he's the actual main character of all this. So he meets up with Shin. With same katana being done, they have one last ride together as a sort of closing ceremony, and so the two reach a deeper level of understanding. This whole arc has been nothing more than setup, a really long setup, and it honestly wasn't all that fun to begin with. It tries so hard to put in drama where it really isn't needed. This creates a stark contrast between the present storyline and the past. The present is more of a traditional shonen, it's goofy and doesn't take itself too seriously most of the time. There's a nice balance between the comedy and the drama. But the past is way too melodramatic. Characters are all serious about their emotions and take things way too seriously. Like teenagers, they try too hard to be mature and deep with their ideals and thoughts, which doesn't work with the initial tone of the present setting and characters have created. This only creates narrative whiplash. And these parts aren't even fun. I'm sure you've realized by now, we still haven't seen what exactly led to Shin's death and why Maya has a grudge towards Mitsuomi. Well, we're back in the present now. The Juken Club has heard the story, or rather, the first part of the story, and they can't stop thinking about it. Soichiro in particular. He can't help but wish he'd been born 2 years earlier so that he'd have gotten into Todo when all this was happening. It feels like if he was there, maybe he would have been able to change things and help Maya out. While this comment alone shows how much of a sweet and valiant guy Soichiro is deep down inside, it rubbed me the wrong way. The main character of this story is way more invested in the stories of the past rather than his own story. To me, that was a slap in the face. To make things even worse, all the other characters sort of feel the same way. All they can keep thinking about is the past and want nothing more than to finish that story. They claim it's to better understand what they are fighting for, but it honestly feels half-baked. Word of the Juken Club's victory at the bowling alley quickly makes its way to the rest of the school, and this brings forth new challengers looking forward to take down the crew. On the other hand, Maya has been called to the principal's office. Some kind of punishment needs to be carried out for the events that happened last night, so Maya is going to be expelled. But after hearing this, Soichiro and Bob are not too happy about this and go on to storm the executive council to have them revoke her expulsion. But they go up against Bunshichi and well... Meanwhile, Aya has taken up the Chokoto Reiki again and shows it off to Masataka. The two of them also had the bright idea of going to storm the student council's office, but on their way there, Aya's eyes awaken again and she peers into the office just in time to hear Soichiro confess that the reason he's trying so hard to revoke Maya's expulsion is because he's falling for her. This breaks Aya's heart, but deep down she knew all along. With the reappearance of the Reiki, Mitsuomi is alerted by this and sends out a crew to go find her, but he's already too late. Aya has left the school grounds to hide at Masataka's place. This is a rather silly plot point and doesn't really go anywhere. All the while Soichiro and Bob are going on about how much they want to know more about what happened in the past. That's all they want to talk about, and on the other end, Maya has teamed up with Mitsuomi to find Aya and Reiki, but just spends time reminiscing about the past. So after some back and forth, Bunshichi finally decides to continue telling them said story. Oh my goodness, back to the past we go. So Shin is back in school, and uh-oh, I wonder if YouTube will have a problem with that eye patch. Anyway, Shin is back in school and looks like he, Mitsuomi and Bunshichi are buddies again, despite everything that has happened. With the end of Katana, they decided to open up a new club, that club being the Juken Club. Yes, they were the initial founders. The sole reason for this club creation is to enter their school's tournament arc, where the victors will become the new executive council. However, they need 5 people in order to sign up. So Mitsuomi gets Maya to join, and after some back and forth, she agrees, bringing along their final member who really isn't important. The rules of the tournament arc are pretty simple. The first stage is sort of like a battle royale. You can get challenged by any other team wherever you are, and anything goes. So you can guess that most of the teams have their eyes set on Shin's team. They get jumped by a ninja team who so conspicuously bind Maya. Whoa, is that a not so cleverly disguised fetish I see? Just as Shin is about to step in and save her, Mitsuomi cuts in first. He pulls her out and the two make quick work of their enemies, in perfect sync might I add, and Shin doesn't like this. Now not only will Mitsuomi eventually take his life, he's afraid he'll take his sister too. More battles take place and Shin gets summoned by the Takayanagi boss again. He gives Shin the Reiki again and tells him, "Oh hey, you know these high school students are all fighting? It'd be pretty cool if you murdered a few of them. You know, just to test out your skill and all." The goal behind this? Well, to turn Shin into the ultimate evil for Mitsuomi to defeat, all towards the master plan of creating the ultimate martial artist. But he chooses not to take the katana. The Juken Club are up against some martial artists who want to have one-on-one fights with them, but oh no, it's a trap to lure Maya out to use her as bait to get Shin riled up. And it works! He goes full berserk on them, working everyone in there. However, he starts to go out of control, and just as he's about to attack an ally, Mitsuomi swoops in. But Shin anticipates this and hits him with a pretty deadly move, which we later find out damages Mitsuomi on the inside. This is why his body is degrading. We're gonna fast forward a bit as not a lot of stuff happens that's all that's important. Mitsuomi becomes a lot more serious and solos the tournament arc finals, giving him the confidence and resolve he needs to face Shin once and for all. And the day of the fight finally comes. To everyone's surprise, Shin, the man who is said to be the strongest around, is getting pulverized by Mitsuomi. This isn't even a fight, it's an execution. Watching this almost makes you feel bad for Shin. Even the other characters can't stand watching the fight. And just as Mitsuomi is about to deliver the final blow, Maya dives in, her feeling for Shin's getting the best of her. It's a touching moment, but just when you think things are over, Shin pulls this off. His Dragon Eye awakens again and goes berserk, wrecking everyone there except Maya. When he finally does come to his senses, he realizes what he's done. Feeling utterly defeated, he embraces Mana one last time. She apologizes to him for everything and leaves him with some final words. This resolves Shin, someone desperately clinging to life. So with that, he chooses to end his own life with her. Hold up, you're telling me Shin didn't in fact die by Mitsuomi's hands? When we were told several times that he killed Shin? Heck, when this was all going on, Mitsuomi was unconscious. So this means that Maya's grudge is pretty much misguided, as the person she should be seeking revenge on is already dead. Speaking of Maya, this seems like a good time to talk about her. Maya is without a doubt the centerpiece of the entire story. Her actions, and in some cases lack thereof, leads to a lot of the problems occurring in the plot. She's unable to make a goal and commit to it, and rarely ever faces the consequences of her actions. Her whole relationship with Shin is a good example of this. She claims to want to be strong enough to beat her brother, so she goes around defeating his team members to prove her strength. And when the perfect opportunity does come, she suddenly doesn't want that anymore and just wants to be by his side. She's an enabler. Not once does she reprimand him for inflicting lifelong injuries on normal people over and over again. Instead, she gives him a pat of the back and tells him everything is going to be alright. Even when she goes back to Mitsuomi, crying and begging him to help stop her brother's rampage, she goes back on that and doesn't want him hurting Shin. Like, woman, pick a struggle. It's always one step forward and two steps back with her. At the final episode, I found myself really disliking her and everything she stood for. Speaking of final episode, in case you didn't notice, we're at the final episode and still stuck in matters of the past, and like me, you're thinking, where's Soichiro? Good question. We don't get to see them until like halfway through the episode, so after all that, after hearing like 13 episodes worth of flashbacks, their reception to it all, like to me and this series, is pretty lukewarm. Realizing they don't have much runtime left, the rest of the episode goes at an incredibly breakneck speed. This has the same energy as trying to do homework just as his teacher is collecting them. So Aya returns to school with the Reiki, Mitsuomi and Maya show up, Aya makes a run for it, Isuzu shows up to fight her, Aya shoots some kind of Kamehameha knocking her out, Mitsuomi tries to go after her but gets stopped by Masataka, but wait, Soichiro and Bob show up to stop Mitsuomi. They try to run him over but that doesn't work. Then Soichiro goes on a whole 20-second rant, then they fight, throwing around each other, before unlocking dragon auras and having some kind of DBC style battle with explosion. He gets wailed on again. Maya cuts in. Mitsuomi backs off for now. He challenges them to the yearly tournament arc, the stage to which they'll have their final battle and settle everything once and for all. And that pretty much ends the series. But for a last episode, this doesn't resolve anything. The rapid fire pacing and the way more comedic tone to it left a rather empty feeling in my gut. In fact, I left the episode wondering if this anime would have been a lot more better if it was a gag shonen. None of the characters felt like they had grown all that much, save for Mitsuomi and I guess a bit of Soichiro. Aya, after resolving to let go of her infatuation with Soichiro, goes back on that and continues to pester him with her feelings despite him turning her down every time it procs up. To make things even worse, the anime didn't quite pique my interest to find out how the story progresses in the manga. In fact, I wanted nothing to do with it the moment I had finished that last episode, so I strongly do not recommend. So hi, Editor Bread here. As I was working on this, I decided to check out the last chapter of the manga just for the heck of it, and I have to say it was weird. Okay, so Soichiro gets into this, well, I call it a Super Saiyan long hair form that is possessed by evil, and he's going berserk, right? And the only person that can stop him is Masataka, so they have a fight where he's trying to keep Super Berserk Soichiro at bay. While on the other side of things, Maya and Aya have gone to the spirit world to save Soichiro from some other entity that's claiming to be God or something like that. It's all just really, really weird. It goes off the rails really fast. So they fight and all that, and Masataka loses his hand and they are able to snap Soichiro out of the whole evil mood thing, and then it's just what is going on? Maya, in order to save Soichiro and Aya, who are in the spirit world, she sacrifices herself and calls it her atoning for her sins and all of that nonsense, and it's bro. And it just ends. Oh, and Bob loses his dreadlocks, and that's unfortunate. And it ends, and that is it. We don't really get Aya doesn't like get to be with Soichiro in the end. They just keep doing their back and forth, and it's just it was really whack. I would say that, but the art looked really good though. Tenjou Tenge doesn't really deliver on what it was trying to do. The flashbacks and melodrama seriously drag down the whole experience. It's one big old catfish. Even the martial arts actions and the anime tries to pull aren't all that enjoyable. If you recall, I said the first fight, where Soichiro gets pummeled by Masataka, was the best looking fight in the anime, even after 24 episodes. Every other fight works like a slideshow that is seriously dragged down by its awful pacing mid-fight. A character would land a hit and we cut to a drawn out reaction from another separate character watching the whole thing. It was really jarring and took away from whatever little hype the fight had going for it. While the animation lacked, I'm willing to give it a pass considering the time it came out, but we've got other things that looked way better than what this anime was putting out, but I'm not going to compare too much. The places I would give the anime credit in are in its art, which I think was also what created problems for the animation. A lot of the anime makes use of close-up shots of characters and they were always so detailed. Their faces and their hair details were always so crisp and looking kind of shiny, no matter what angle they were in. And speaking of angles, I bet you can tell where a lot of their priorities were. Aside from the art, the OST itself really slapped. The tracks went really hard, especially the fight music. I'd play them for you, but I don't think YouTube would like that. But then even with good music, they became pretty overused and sometimes inappropriately placed. They'd put blood pumping music over the most boring of scenes and just call it a day. At least it made them a bit more bearable. Tenjou Tenge is one anime I do not recommend even to the most die-hard watchers. Seriously, it's super forgetful and shouldn't be given the time of day. So you should thank me for taking time out of my busy schedule of doing nothing to spread the word, which you can do by hitting that subscribe button. I'd try to forget it, but my god, the OP and ED are insanely catchy. It's so good they can't stop ringing in my head. Help me. Yeah, this is where I'll call it a day. This has been the biggest project I have worked on and had a lot of fun working on it, so I hope you all had as much fun watching it. As always, this has been your very favorite slice of bread. Stay toasty.